38 seconds. Let me just show you how powerful 38 seconds can be.
They are rage, brutal, without mercy. But you will be worse. Rip and tear until it is done.
What you just saw was the first 38 seconds of Doom 2016, one of my favorite games ever made. From the moment I started it, I couldn't put it down. It became an inside joke between me, my roommate, and our mutual friend. For like a week straight, I was glued to Doom. Sometimes they would just come into the living room and watch me play it for a while. In 38 seconds, Doom achieves two things. The first is, it gives the player control of the core gameplay immediately. It's obviously an FPS, and within less than a minute of the game, you're shooting enemies. There's no bullshit like herding sheep or anything. The second thing Doom does in 38 seconds is establishing a curiosity. You hear a voice in the beginning of the game, and you find your character tied up and restrained, ready to be killed. If this is your first time playing Doom, you're probably thinking, what the hell is going on? First impressions are everything. You've probably heard that before, and from my experiences, it's pretty true. With the endless amount of TV shows and movies coming to streaming services, the endless amount of music being released every day, the endless amount of games coming to Game Pass and also just being released at retail price, so many things are begging for your attention constantly. And of course, there are things like Instagram Reels and TikTok, which usually provide such short bursts of entertainment that it just beckons you to keep watching and keep watching and keep watching. And the sad thing is, all of these things begging for your attention usually love wasting your time as well. Obviously, the number one form of currency that these companies want from you is your money. But there's also a second form of currency that they really want, which is your engagement, aka your time. Because if they keep you engaged, if they keep you on their app or their service for a longer amount of time, there's a good chance that you might end up coughing up more of your money. With video games specifically, the longer a game is or the longer it keeps you engaged, the more likely you are to end up buying microtransactions or DLC. It is honestly kind of sad and disrespectful how much these companies love just wasting our time, which is why to me, for as long as I've been really analyzing games, I have always said the way a game starts is one of the most important aspects of it. One thing I really can't stand is when people say things like, it gets really good after 5 hours. No. We don't do that here. Please just get the... And I know some people would like to make the argument that games with really good stories usually have a slower intro, but that's not really always the case. A great story never has to come at the cost of great gameplay. Just look at BioShock. It has one of the greatest stories in video game history. And within the first 10 minutes of that game, you go from smoking a cig on a plane, to that plane crashing, to entering a creepy tower in the middle of the ocean in the middle of the night, to shooting lightning bolts at drug addicts. That's crazy, and you do that all within 10 minutes. And the special thing about video games is, only video games can do that. Now, of course, everybody has a different barometer for what they would consider an intro, and I think it honestly depends on the overall length of the game. But to me, an intro is the first hour, and a lot of my favorite games have amazing first hours. I know it's been well documented, but I have to say it for myself. The intro to Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past need to be studied, but let's just focus on A Link to the Past for right now. Within like the first 2 minutes of A Link to the Past, you go from being a kid sleeping in his bed on a rainy night, to talking to your dying uncle in a creepy castle, to fighting enemies, solving puzzles, and guess what? Doing the core gameplay of a Zelda game. You get the lantern, the sword, the boomerang, all within these first 10 minutes. And what I love about intros like this is when a game can seamlessly teach you how to play the game without any stupid text boxes like,
press the start button to open up your inventory, and then you can swap items.
Press the R button to use your item.
No, we don't do that here. Just get the fuck. A lot of people like to mention the same things when they talk about the death of video game manuals. They usually talk about how they used to read them on the car ride back from the game store when their parents were driving them back home, or how they would like bring them to school and read them in school. I did both of those things. But honestly, I think the biggest loss ever since video game manuals stopped really being a thing is now when you start a game, it doesn't actually start. You need to have like a baby level that's like, press A because it's the action button. It's kind of a shame because back in the day, if you had any questions about the gameplay or the story of the game you were playing, all you had to do is open this little book up, read for like 2 minutes, and your answers would be solved. But because we don't have that quick, easy guide with us while we're playing a game, developers have to make things, again, baby-proof. I just really think the best games have amazing intros. The beginning of Uncharted 2 is amazing. You're climbing this derailed train and then you get a flashback and you're thinking, okay, it's gonna be a little while until I shoot some guys, they're gonna explain. No, you go right back to the train and now you're shooting guys, and then you get another flashback and it's explaining the story, and all within like 5 minutes, you are in the middle of Uncharted 2. And that's amazing. I know I probably sound super impatient or like I have a TikTok destroyed brain, and both of those things are probably true. But I do think it's important to say that some of my favorite games of all time have pretty terrible intros. For example, Kingdom Hearts 2. In terms of the story, the intro is awesome. In terms of the actual gameplay, the first 2.5 to 3 hours of that game sucks ass. But I love that game regardless because of what the main meat of the game actually is. Would I have preferred it to take a lot less than 2.5 hours? Absolutely. Some games do benefit from kind of teasing the player for a little bit. For example, you start Oblivion, you know it's an open world game. Where does the game start you? In the very antithesis of an open world, a small, cramped prison cell. Then you spend the next 20 minutes in these cramped, tight dungeon hallways. But guess what? You're still doing the main gameplay. You're picking up items, you're opening up your menus, you're fighting enemies, you're casting spells, you're lock-picking doors. And then finally, at the end of probably 30 minutes, you exit the sewers and you're just hit with that giant world and all of the promise that it holds. And it just hits extra hard because you had to wait that 30 minutes. It's obviously the same trick they would use with Fallout 3, starting the player off in Vault 101 for the first hour. It's very story heavy, you're not really doing anything that exciting, and then when you finally get out, you're like, whoa, holy shit, I'm in the game now. And you wouldn't get that feeling if you didn't let the player just marinate in some slower narrative heavy moments. Luckily, I do think the era of really bad game intros is behind us. I think it was the second half of the 6th gen and the first half of the 7th gen where just developers didn't know how to start a game. A great comparison is Persona 4, which is one of my favorite games of all time, and that game famously takes forever to get the player into the main gameplay. I think it takes like 7 hours for you to be in a dungeon with a party fighting monsters on a regular basis. Yes, I was just out of breath there. And when you compare it to that team's most recent offering, Metaphor ReFantazio, which is essentially Persona 6, that game gets you started way faster than P4 or P5. You are in the main gameplay of Metaphor within like 2.5-3 hours, which for a normal game is still bad, but for a very long Atlas RPG, pretty good. Game pacing is one of the most important aspects of a game to me. Every detail in your game should always matter. But, of course, they matter twice as much during the first hour because, again, first impressions are everything. It's like going on a first date and you look great, right? You're in a great outfit, you just got a haircut, you look amazing, but you didn't brush your teeth and you had a tuna sandwich for lunch. Those little details can just kill everything. It can kill a first impression. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed it and you want to see more content, please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, share this video with a friend or a family member that has a similar interest in video games. I really appreciate it. Thank you.